In 2022, a close friend introduced me to a book written by James Talone, a former neighbor. The book, There It is a deeply personal and insightful story of his time in Vietnam, serving as a Marine Corps First Lieutenant in 1968. In the book, he reveals the realities of the Vietnam War while honoring his comrades in arms. This video offers insight into how Jim's background led him to follow a sense of duty, volunteer for service, and in the process earned him a Silver Star for his courage and leadership. It also follows his love of literature that led him to become a beloved high school English teacher after the war.
There it is. In Vietnam, in the hot, hard summer of 1968, I noticed a phrase coming from the mouths of Marine grunts. There it is. Heydrich, standing on that blasted hill in his tattered t-shirt, said it when resupply was put off again. There it is. Chapman, shaking his head, said it when he was told Sergeant B had had his leg blown off. There it is. Irving said it when he ripped open a pack of Goofy Grape and poured it into his plastic canteen. There it is. I never knew what it meant, and no grunt could explain it clearly. It was something about the truth, something like being there, except different. There it is. I was deep in the country, deep in the mindset of survival. Except for the rare rush of combat, there were no distractions. There it is. Out with the Marines on the dry hills above Route 9, there were no weekends, no TV, no movies or dates, no tests, except the big test we were living. There it is. We dug into the sandy soil as if our lives depended on it. I learned to love the shape of the land, the gentle rise that I leaned on to read my book, the rise that protected me from enemy fire, the sandy soil I slept on each night. There it is. We lived with the rhythms of the land, the smell of the earth. We got up in the pearl soft light of dawn and found shade to hide from the hot noonday sun. When it rained, we got wet, and when the sun came out, we dried. There it is. My mind was always there, my ears always listening, waiting for the swish that preceded the crash of an incoming mortar round. The smell of cordite, the dreaded call, corpsmen up. There it is. We loaded our wounded on choppers, and when we didn't have water, we scraped their blood off our fingernails with twigs. There it is. Every single night after eating our C's, we sat in silence and watched the red sun set and the sky go dark. There it is. Let's go why I went to Vietnam. It was 1967, and things were a little bit different in 67 than they were in 68, and certainly 69 or 70, when nobody wanted to go to Vietnam. Early on, it was patriotic. We were helping to stop the spread of communism. I had been raised in Catholic schools. Catholic schools were very anti-communist, with some good reason. There was the idea of a dominoes falling. Russia went communist, China went communist, North Vietnam was communist. Down in the Caribbean, Cuba was communist. So it was moving in that direction. And I was, so that was part of it, the political thing. Part of it was probably emotional, that I had grown up with guys who had just come back from World War II. I was born in 45, and these guys, I'm 6 and 8 and 10 years old, and you're looking up to these guys. These are the real men who went off to war. Now, in fairness, my father didn't go, but he was 4F. But my uncle went, and a lot of the people that worked at Talone, where I grew up, had served. So it was sort of to join a band of brothers. I mean, that's become more popular now. I don't know that we thought of it as Band of Brothers. Uh, but to do something with that. Dr. Tom Dooley was a big name. He was a Navy doctor. In '54, when the country split, he went back. He did a whole bunch of work up in the hills with the Montagnards and stuff, and had horrible things to write about the communists coming in. So it was sort of like, we're going to be heroic, we're going to go and we're going to stop the communism. I had finished college. I was in graduate school. I took too many classes. I did well in most, but one I got a D, and I was like, I'm tired of school. Maybe it's time to do my duty or to do something. So I, left off school for the time. I later went back and went down to the Marine Corps and signed up. Raised my hand, did the whole bit, and then went through OCS to become an officer in basic school. I went in early March of 1967, and by December of '67 I was in country in Vietnam and settling in with a platoon. Somewhat prepared, but not really, because you do a lot of learning on the job. So that's why I went, I think. I'm trying to think if I thought of any other reason to going, but it was sort of my duty. I had a good friend who was married with a kid, and okay, well, he shouldn't have to go, but I'm single, I can go. So that's why I went. I started teaching in 1970, and people had asked me occasionally about Vietnam. I came out, after I got out, I got a Silver Star, which was a big deal, a little bit of a big deal. Not so much to me, but to other people. And but I'm teaching English, and it's not necessarily, conducive to talk about Vietnam at that time. So if anybody asked me, I talked. It wasn't like I didn't have PTSD. It wasn't a shock to my system to go back and talk about this. Eventually, though, I can remember writing. I was giving out assignments in a class, and I said, "Okay, let's write a Christmas story, or tell me about a Christmas memory." So I went back and wrote a Christmas memory. My first Christmas in Vietnam, when I had gone, 6 weeks without any kind of mail, and was desperate for some kind of, there were no phones in those days. There was no Zoom or, anything like that to keep in touch. So the mail was it. And then on Christmas Day, I got 27 letters. One of the best Christmases of my life. And I wrote that, and I wrote a couple other little things. I took a course in memoir writing, creative memoir writing. I had never ever tried to do dialogue. And the teacher of the course had me do dialogue, which I found very difficult, but also made the writing come alive. Later on, I taught a memoir writing class, and I shared some of the stories with them, and they were like, "Well, tell me more. So I wrote more. I don't know how many I wrote to this day, 50, 60, 70 pieces, and they said, you have to publish it. And okay, that's, I always sort of secretly harbored the thought that it would be neat to write a book. It seemed so far beyond anything I could do. But I had a bunch of these pieces, and we started putting them together, and they helped me, and their encouragement helped me. The target of the book was anybody who had an interest in that sort of thing. Looking ahead, it would be like to a grandkid or somebody in the future. And I wanted to, I guess one of the themes of the book is to describe what it was like to be in a platoon, in combat. As a matter of fact, I was part of Bravo 19. 19 was 1st Battalion, 9th Marines, 3rd Marine Division. 19 was the unit that took the most casualties in the Vietnam War, actually, I think in almost any war. 1968 was the bloodiest year of the war, certainly for the Americans. We were losing up to 500 men a week. And in the midst of all of that, up in the northernmost part of the country where there was lots of action, I still spent, I don't know, 300 days in the field, and only 3 of them or so were actual fighting. 290 of them were walking in the woods, walking through the rice paddies, looking for the enemy who didn't want to be found, thank God, and they mostly stayed away. But in the process of doing that, I had a whole bunch of experiences that were very powerful, I thought, to me. As difficult as it could be sometimes, I was with people I admired above me, and also the people I served with. And we were living on the land. Literally, you slept on the ground. There was no beds, no cots, no rear for us most of the time. And I got to like living on the land, which I didn't expect, and I didn't really think of much at that time. But it was an experience that, I guess good hunters and people that go into the wilderness, maybe they experience this more than I did. But to do it every day was an interesting thing. So the idea, write the book, get as much of that down, get it as close to true as you can get it, knowing that it's only, one person's view. There's, a truck driver down in Saigon is having a very different war than me. There were people who saw more combat, who saw more danger, but there weren't a ton of them. I mean, we were pretty far out there. Part of this is I grew up loving books. My mother, my father, both were big on books, and that was like the grail to write a book. Even if it is just a memoir, and to make it as good as you can. One of the things that I found in the writing was that I had to relive parts of it. And that's an interesting thing, because I don't know what it's exactly like. Your memory's like a sponge or something, but you have to, it comes out slowly. You have to squeeze it sometimes, spend some time, do some thinking, and I enjoyed that challenge of writing. Writing to try to get it to somebody could feel it, somebody could see where I was. And the people I was working with in this writing group were very good that way, because they responded to that. And a few people have said, it's a book that sort of takes you there and in there. And probably the toughest thing I had to do was we had had a bad battle I had like 8 guys killed, 25 wounded maybe, and we had to go out. It was so hot and it was so hard to get them in. We were on a high ridge line, but we had to go out the next day and get the bodies. It's part people don't think about. There are this many killed or something, but somebody's got to go do that. And part of the book is, the real life sorts of things that that go along with being a Marine in combat and stuff like that. Most of the stories that I wrote there were incidents. Something happened, and I could usually do it in about 1,000 words. This one was a 2-day battle, and it took like 20,000 words or something, or 10,000 at least, to tell the story. Some of what I wrote about was me evolving, sort of not knowing what I was doing when I came in. In December, went through Khe Sanh, went through the battles, and as I go, I'm learning and surviving. By August, all of the people I had come in with, all of the officers I had come in with had been medevac. None of them killed, but they all had been hit and taken out of the field. So I was sort of the last man standing. But I was also at that point 9 months of experience. So we were going down a thin ridge line that was probably as wide as this house, up about 300 or 400 feet, all very thick stuff. And one of our squads got caught sort of in an ambush out about 1.5 miles from us, from our base. And they needed help, so I took 10 or 12 guys, and we brought ponchos to help carry back wounded and water. And we went out. We already had 3 or 4 dead at that point, so we're trying to get them back in. And in the process of getting them back in, we were cut off by the enemy again, took a few more heavy casualties, and we're sort of stopped. It was late in the day, it was like 5:30, and we could either try to force our way through it, but the problem was we were carrying dead and wounded. And it's a very true thing that a Marine can go in and pick up a guy and throw him over his shoulder and run a couple hundred yards. It's almost impossible to pick up a dead body and do that. I don't know exactly why, but there's just no... So it was 4 guys on each wounded guy or dead body. So we only had 4 or 5 riflemen. And we started out, we were cut off by that. We spent the night there, and then sort of had to fight our way back in the next morning. The company tried to come out, and we got hit by our own airplanes. And the captain got hit badly, and so did the gunny and a couple other guys. And our colonel thought I did a pretty good job, and he put me in for a Medal of Honor. I think partly because he wanted to get a medal, and it was just, if the battle's big enough, then there's more medals to go around. So the medal mattered some, but the respect of the troops mattered more. These guys were exceptional. I was general's aide to Ray Garretson, who was a 1-star general. His boss was Ray Davis, who was a 2-star general. Ray Davis was a Medal of Honor winner who became assistant commandant of the Marine Corps. Under him, and my CO when I was in the field was Bob Barrow. He had a Silver Star from Korea, from Chosun Reservoir, because these guys are legends in the Marine Corps. And that was just chance that put me there with them. Most of the people most of the officers were really pretty good, especially the further you went up. You didn't get to be a colonel or general unless you were squared away. You didn't work for Ray Davis unless you were really good. And it was a fascinating thing for me to listen to these guys. You know, you hear about the idiot generals sometimes, and it's true, but these guys were not idiots. These guys were careful. They were concerned with their people. Davis called the lowest private sir, and treated everybody with great respect. And the toughest reflection is, you know, was it worth it? Should you have done it? And the easy answer is it's never worth somebody's life to go to war, especially if it's you. And of course, since we lost the Vietnam War, it was a very unpopular war. By the time I came home, nobody spit on me or I didn't have anything really negative like that. But that happened out there, and it wasn't something that you particularly talked about, because most of the people you're going to talk to were anti-war, get us out of this at that time. And so I have very mixed feelings. For me personally, who survived it, it was, I don't know whether it wasn't a life-changing thing, because I don't feel like I changed. It certainly was somehow life-affirming. If you drank water out of a rice paddy because you were so thirsty and hot, that's not a good thing to do, by the way. And you appreciate a water fountain. If you've slept on the cold ground for 30 straight days, a bed feels pretty good. One of the big things, of course, was when you're growing up is courage. And I think that most of the guys I served with were volunteers. The Marines, there were very few draftees that wound up in the Marine Corps. But the biggest question for all of them is, what do I do when the bullets start to fly? Will I do my job? Will I be a coward? Will I be, doing anything I can? Will I shoot myself in the foot to get out of here? Or something like that? And to know that I did that didn't make me brave for other things, but to sort of know, okay, I've done that. I successfully lived through 13 months of a war. Would I go back? Not particularly, but at the time, I was proud of the people that I served with. I was proud of the people I met. And I think that that's extremely important. I never would have met the people except for being in the service. And if I met them in the service as a regular second lieutenant peacetime, I never would have got to know them the way I knew them in the field. There were 50 guys in my platoon. The platoon would set in every night, and it might be an area of 50 yards that we would cover. Everybody slept there. Everybody ate there. Everybody got their mail there. There was nowhere else to go. It was probably the only time in my life when I was sort of fully involved, and there were no distractions, as I think I put out in that poem. You're there, and you're with people, and everybody is looking to do the same thing, which is basically keep everybody from getting killed. And that experience, I don't know the words to say to explain it. I can still be very cowardly on a whole bunch of things. Yeah, I'm not going to climb up onto your third floor roof and do roofing because I'm afraid of heights. But at one time I did this difficult thing, and that gives me a little bit of pride. Reflection also, people make a big deal of serving your country, and I think it is a big deal, and I think there ought to be a draft and a whole bunch of other things. But that I served my country more as a platoon commander, company commander, XO in Vietnam, or as an English teacher at Radnor High School and Delaware Valley Friends School. Seems to me it probably did more good, 40 years of teaching than I did. And that's more important. But no, it doesn't make a good book. Most of the people who have read it, and that's probably about 300 or 400 people, for a lot of them, it explains things to them of the way it was. And I'm proud of my writing to be able to do that well. When the wall went up, the Vietnam Memorial Wall, I went down and found some of the people who had been in the unit. It's a little bit tricky to find them. One of my favorite corpsmen lived in California. I can remember writing to him, not to him. He had died. Keith Lee, our machine gunner, Sergeant Mazzo, Keith Lee and Long particularly, Mazzo too probably, were just really good people. There's obviously no calculation that will tell you what they would have done in the war. I'm still in touch with two lieutenants that I served with at different times. My platoon sergeant, who was badly wounded up at Quai San, I'm in touch with. One of my guy was a PFC at the time at Quai San, and he was through the whole thing. I'm in contact with him. He lives out in the Philippines, but Facebook lets you keep connected. I'm not particularly interested in reliving. I'm not particularly interested in flag waving. I'm interested in the people. And I think hopefully that comes across somewhat in the book. Because there's chapters there about Doc Long, about Keith Lee's pig, Keith Lee's making whiskey up at Quai San. When we couldn't get mail, he found a way to make moonshine, which was really neat. The guy's 20 years old and smart as hell. So, yeah, I'm still in touch with some of them, and I like that, being able to do that. It was a little crazy. I mean, like I said, the colonel said, "Oh, put him in for a Medal of Honor." I didn't rate that. It wasn't near that level of heroism and self-sacrifice. But because they did that, I could have gotten a Bronze Star or Silver Star right there, and with the troops around. As it was, and this should have been wonderful, I got out of the Corps in the beginning of 1970, came home, was teaching, or substitute teaching, and for Memorial Day in 1970, They had they always have a big parade, and I would get the Silver Star there. But in my head, as I'm thinking of getting this, I wish I could have been there with Keithley, Doc Long, Jim Houck, the people who I had served with. Their recognition is more important to me than that. Would have been really neat. And of course you can't. Mostly you can't do that.